welcome to another episode of Talks Across Time and Space. Today's topic, failure. As always, as before, I am your moderator and normally your game master. I am Thomas, and I am joined by... Oh crap, we forgot to go over the order. See, already on topic. Let's just go down the Discord list.
Alright, down the Discord list.
Yep, so starting with Leah.
Alright. Hi, I'm Kitsune. Next.
Jane.
I thought there was going to be more.
Am I next? Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm PSP.
And I am Dustin.
So a bit of housekeeping before we fully get into the topic here. My day job, I work retail. And we're in the full swing of the Christmas season. And it is kicking my buttocks. So, as such, and I have a lot of other events, including birthdays and as well as the holidays as well. So I will not have time to properly prep for the game. So we are going to be running a kind of a skeleton crew this month. So we're doing the Talks Across Time and Space tonight. And next week we will actually not be having a stream. And the week after... we will be doing, I believe, which should be the one after Christmas, we will be doing a community Jackbox on that night. So. Alright, someone checking our stream, make sure I'm talking across that, because I think that was a problem last time.
Oh, yes. Let me...
Is the stream link for me to...
Yep, no, I just checked it. I am being recorded.
Okay,
Speaking of failures, last time, quick threw this together on the spot, so, kinda didn't check things, so I forgot to copy the audio logs. Also, it is really distracting seeing oneself move out of sync with yourself, so slide that over. Okay, I'm good. I'm okay. So yeah. Failure. It's a thing that happens. It could be a good storytelling. Come on, it can become a wonderful in-joke among your friends and enemies and your frenemies and your enons. I don't know where I'm going with that. But yeah. And it's a thing.
What about your friend enemy?
That's silly. Anyways. Addictions to stress aside. I wanted to kind of start off with just kind of each of us telling an experience where there was something that went bonkersly wrong. So, I'm going to just start us off here with this. So, before I got into any of the published systems, I basically, like I told you last time we did this talk crossing, I started with homebrew games. And so, of course, what everyone does when they start in homebrew games, they end up saying, like, I think I can homebrew something myself. And it was actually a decent enough system and so everything like that. But I thought I'd do like, oh, hey, Stranger in a Strange World game where you know your characters are from thing and they got swapped into that. And that there's two warring fractions, there's maybe this crazy other stuff going involved that I'm not gonna say yet, this is gonna be foreshadowing. Bunch of things. Problem with running those is that first off, you need to make them care about where they came from beforehand, because otherwise they're like, okay. And it's a lot harder to do that when you're creating your own setting versus using an existing setting. Other thing is, when you're trying to set two factions on it against each other, you kind of need to give them some characteristics or something for the players to latch on to. So yeah, that game just died on impact. But the reason I bring it up though is it had the only funny line in the entire thing. One of the players was asking for meat, and I don't even remember the full details of why, but for some reason the people that they were with didn't understand what mead was. And so he just said, it's alcohol made from like honey and shit. And before I even had a chance to make the joke, He says this is like, that is a euphemism. I do not mean actually put that in there. That was the highlight of the entire game, was that one exchange. The only other time I would have thinking would have been the time a player one-shot a boss in a different version of the same homebrew setting game and everything. But I don't remember a lot about that other than the boss just went way quicker. So yeah, that's my icebreaker of a story of failure. So who's next? Jane, I know you said before we got on the air you had us.
Yeah, all of the story. If Dustin and they need a little longer. See, I guess if we're focusing on role playing failures, I'll talk about a in-character failure that happened once in a game I was in. Also, excuse my background noise a little bit. But so originally I was playing in a D&D 5e game, and we were needing to deliver, or sorry, not a 5e. This was 3.5. Sorry, brain fart. But so there's another failure. Anyway, so we were supposed to go and deliver a letter to a very powerful political figure. However, like they needed to, there needed to be, say, like a long meeting, and we were kind of in the rush to save the world and all that and stuff. So one of my party members had a very brilliant idea to cause like a distraction, and then we would go in and meet this individual during just the chaos of this distraction, deliver the letter, and be able to move on our way. So originally he was thinking something like very simple, like a smoke bomb or whatever, and he gave out instructions to our party to take said item to go get said items. Keep in mind, this was not a failure technically on my character at this point. These were tasks given to other party members who went out and gathered the material, and my character actually was one of the ones who was helping him with concocting it in the first place, and ended up being basically the deliverer of this distraction. So they didn't make a simple smoke bomb. They got some very powerful ingredients. So when he mixed it together, somehow it didn't blow up in his face. He gave it to my character to go like, okay, go throw this at like a nearby parapet and use it as a distraction. So being a druid, I summon like a griffin or whatever and have a monkey hold on to it as like my deliverer. So they fly up in the air, they drop it on the parapet. It's a little bit more than a smoke bomb. It was terrifyingly, brokenly awful. It was basically a terrorist attack. What we ended up making was probably the most dangerous weapon in the world, because it was literally not only an explosive, but like the following chemicals in it also left like a fog of just poison behind. It was literally almost like a nuclear bomb, basically, like level. So I've ended up being the deliverer of this weapon. So, good thing aside though, luckily, our rogue who made the bomb did get to sneak in and deliver this letter, and thus we were able to move on with the plot. But what we created out of it ended up becoming a much more terrifying, awful thing in the world. And for that was a failure because, well, we did make a new plot point, but that was not the intent.
So yes, not only were you left in time to save the world, you also left before the warrants came out.
Yeah, these like the few ones he created ended up basically becoming artifacts that like real collectors searched for like the others we didn't use, and they ended up like scattered all over the world. So we found a few of them as we were adventuring.
Failure from succeeding too well. So, how about you other two? Anything jump into mind?
Well, I did blow myself up twice. That's one story I can think of. That would be probably worth mentioning.
Well,
All right. Well,
I blew
okay.
up twice.
To,
The end.
It was a World of Darkness game. I think it was a bunch of mage, vampire, and some other stuff. And I
That
was
is
playing
very
a,
accurate description of World of Darkness, honestly.
Yeah, it was a mixed game, and there was actually a lot wrong with this game. The GM was very kind of tyrannical and
Oh.
had a home rule that was if you fail and get a 1 in the dice pool, it's an automatic crit fail.
Oh. Well, yeah, I know where he got that from, because that's basically Exalted's botch, but...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I assume New World of Darkness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they got rid of that for a reason.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't quite aware of this when I made my character be basically an anarchist terrorist. So
no!
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it just keeps piling up.
Yes.
Oh.
So one of my friends was captured by basically vampires, and I was hired to break him out. So I was like, okay, I'll build some bombs, and first one was a nail bomb, and of course I had 13 fucking dice and didn't get a single success on that. And I got a 1 in that roll, so automatic crit failure. And it blew up in my face.
Are you sure that exploded in your face? That sounds like a situation where you might be fine.
So then I somehow managed to survive that with nails and stuff in my body, and so I was like, okay, I can attempt this again, and I actually did get the bomb off, and I was like, oh, I know, I can deliver it by putting it into a pizza box or something like that, and pulling that trick. And so the GM had me roll again to set it up inside the pizza box, and
No.
that time was when it blew up again.
Well, suffice to say, you nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but really that entire game was a mess, so...
Oh yeah, so for those not as familiar with the World of Darkness system, normally the only time where you risk critical failure is if, for whatever reason, you have less than 1 die in your die pool. And in that case, you roll what's called a chance die, which only succeeds on a 10, but if you roll a 1, it critically fails.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the circumstances where you're normally supposed to be able to when you're supposed to botch. So yeah, that's a pretty crazy rule there.
Yeah. I mean, you can also choose to botch if you fail and be like, take a beat, but...
Yeah, that's newer. I was old New World of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Version 1, World of Darkness.
Yeah,
That was more when I was playing that, but... Yeah, no, I like a lot of the stuff they did that. But anyways. So, Hun, got any fun stories of failures?
Not really fun, more catastrophic.
Okay.
So a couple years ago, I came up with the brilliant idea with my ex-girlfriend to decide that we were going to run a Marvel DC crossover RP. This is a writing RP on top. And we tried getting it going for a couple months. Didn't get a lot of people involved in it at all. We couldn't find very many people, so it ended up being kind of just 3 of us. And we decided that it would be a good idea, since we had an entire plot already thought up, that we would just start taking on multiple characters. I think by the end of this catastrophe, I was playing about 16 characters consistently. And I think she was playing like 12 of them, and then our friend Emily had 3 of them. She couldn't handle more than 3. She couldn't handle more than 3. She was drunk 90% of the time, which was ironic because she was playing Tony. And on top of our other problem, as far as DC characters, we literally only had a Poison Ivy and a Harley Quinn, and nothing else. Those were
but that's all you need, isn't it?
Those were our only DC characters, even though we had giant plots come up with that involved Superman. Couldn't get to any of them. We also had a problem that for a long time we didn't have a Captain America, and we had this giant plot that we had decided decided to reference multiple times that had something to do with Hydra trying to bring Hitler back from the dead. And finally one of us decided to take Cap, but by then it had been so long that we all just completely forgot about this plot. So yeah, that was my attempt at running it, and this included me trying to write ads and trying to do all of this, and on top of this there was also the trying to figure out and explain to 2 people who don't really read comics how to try to form their character, because we were all taking consistent characters, and basically I just said, okay, go on the wiki, just pick like what you like from each point. Of course, that's also how me playing Natasha somehow ended up as like the most powerful character in the universe. So that's a bad idea. Don't do that, ever. So, yeah, there's mine.
Alright, so as we can see, it's everyone rolls a 1 in some form or another. But the question I want to now pose to the metaphorical table here is one of should rolling that 1 mean failure? How important is it to say? Do you think it is in the context of an RPG, like a game about telling the story? How important is it to have failure happen? Like, the dice are not always going to come up your way. So, like that, because I know this is an area where I've struggled in. Not in the way you would expect, because I expect occasionally for the players to fail, to not have the dice always land in their favor, and at times, especially because this can be at odds with the fact that I like to run high-power games. Like, I love Exalted. I like games like that. I like Super games. So, I have this economy where it's like, okay, you're talking about a game about demigods, but I still have this expectation that these things are supposed to challenge them, and you're not always going to succeed, and so these kind of things clash for me. So I just kind of want to pose that to the table here. How important is failing in a game?
I kind of think failure is like actually a really good thing to have, like for a game, like because it is like one of those things that you can bounce back from. And I've had things where I've like completely failed stuff, and like it actually advanced the story in such an interesting way. Like I'm gonna go off on another story here.
Go right ahead.
Recently, I had a Pony Finder game on another channel. Like, it wasn't recorded or anything like that, but like I was playing a character called Wildcard, who was a gambler, and so like I was playing a Phantom Thief archetype for the rogue, and I had like a lot of dice in profession gamble, because like, hey, he's a gambler, so. But like for some reason the dice just were not with me that day, and I lost like all my money, and so I was like, okay, I can maybe get this back and be like one more one more game of cards, and if I lose, I get to do a job for you, or whatever it is. And so it was like a roll-off between me and the GM, and of course the GM got a natural 20, and so I failed that, and we did the job, and it led off to us finding the one of the big bads of that time, and I actually ended up with more money from that than I lost.
So yeah,
See,
Can I add on the previous question?
sure.
Honey?
It's a sure, hun.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's extremely important, because getting into it, even if the characters aren't human, the idea is that they're supposed to be realistic. And realistically, people make mistakes. And that's actually, if failure doesn't happen, that's when you get into things like the Mary Sue, in fanfiction terms, at least. And it makes everything more predictable if it doesn't happen. So I'd say that yes, it is extremely important.
Any thoughts, Jane?
Well, I kind of do agree. Like, I think Leah brings up a good point. I think, in general, having failures happen also can help make the story feel organic because, well, yeah, sometimes it may lead to complications, and hopefully, depending on the system or the story being told, that rolling a failure doesn't always just mean game over. It doesn't always just instantly destroy the plot or the story and go like, oh, well, you guys lose. But sometimes, even in those cases, it can still feel like a success because, hey, then you just opened up another story, hopefully, where, you actually have like a follow-up. Go like, okay, well, you guys failed to stop the evil villain because your barbarian rolled a 1 and accidentally cut off your wizard's head. So you didn't have enough to finish. Well, then that still can lead up in the story of like, okay, well, let's time skip a little bit with the new campaign, and we get to go to a future where the evil sorcerer destroyed the world, and you're having to rebuild and stuff. It does still open up plot to most of the time. Like, there might be the occasion of like, oh, well, you accidentally destroyed the universe. This universe is over. Let's just restart the universe and do a different campaign. But normally, failure should be something that can be used to further the plot just as much as success can.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you hit on a good point there. In a lot of games, powered by the apocalypse games like Masks, failure always causes something to happen. Another game that had that. It was Open Legend. It's I backed it on Kickstarter. We might play at some point, but it's a open source RPG. And one of the biggest thing is they say like, if you roll the dice, something is going to be happening. Unfortunately for me, I have to tell this story about this because I got into a rut with this. Because unfortunately, with my players at the time, they were used to the like, okay, I describe a room. It's like, okay, I'm gonna roll perception, and then like everyone's gonna, okay, let's all roll perception. So, trying to cut that out and such. So, a lot of perception rolls were being rolled, and after a while, I noticed a pattern started emerging when they failed perception rolls. Because what I ended up doing, because it's they found something, but it always seemed to be a bomb that was ticking. There wasn't ever intended a bomb. It was a Schrodinger's bomb. It was only there because they failed the roll. But for some reason I just got in a rut where it kept happening. It's like, yeah, no, you found a bomb in there. I don't know why there's a bomb in the Duchess's laundry room, but there's a bomb there. Disclosure here: there has never the game did not actually involve any Duchesses that I can remember. It was a setting called Open. Basically, it was mixture of Mass Effect and Firefly kind of setting.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy the setting. Just open space. The open legend rules just weren't quite doing it for me for that setting. More in it wasn't the player side was working fine. It was working great, but it didn't gel for me on the GM side.
Yeah.
But which kind of brings me to my next question here. Messing up the rules and messing up the game. These are two main ways that an RPG can just fumble. And on the last episode, I believe episode 5 of From the Ashes, I feel like we ran into one. Not messing up the rules, because I think we were doing things by the rules, as far as I can remember. But I am genuinely questioning how much this game is a fit. So, how do you guys feel about the impact of like messing up rules and messing up game stuff?
I mean, that's a hard one for me, like, because I'm very much kind of like learn as I go when it comes to rules. So like, there's a few times like I mess up something, but it's like, okay, well, I can easily. It's something small that I'm like, okay, I'll fix that next time, or like, kind of do on the fly type thing. So. I never had like anything that like ruin games or anything like that. So. Yeah.
Any opinions, Jane?
Well, I think with the way things, I don't know how you think you messed up last time, but I think in general, the rules have been decent. Like, I definitely say there's points when people, if we're going to talk about failure, I'll talk about failure in another minor story. I was part of a server where there was someone who wanted to use 5th edition to simulate My Hero Academia. And I was like, okay, I can see where that works out. They were going to kind of like, basically kind of homebrew a system, but using 5th edition as a base, or pulling off that. I'm like, all right, this sounds like it could work. It could be interesting. My issue was that this person kind of just ignored some of the major balancing issues. Like, I was trying to bring up while we were still in the concept stage of like, well, you don't really have... They wanted to tie like accent surges to like your stamina when they didn't really have any benefits per se in having intelligence or wisdom or charisma. And they were going to give the stat that gives you health the ability to give you more actions, which I was like, okay, well, I don't think this is going to be super balanced or fun to go like, well, this character just instantly beats the crap out of villains while being really tough, but say if you want to be a charisma-based character, you're not going to be particularly amazing. So I brought this up to the GM, and in the end, I think we had enough in the disagreement. I kind of walked away. They kicked me from the group. I will be honest there. I'm not going to say I walked away because I did want to play in it. But in the end, I hope that the GM has realized, or at least respected my opinion enough that, you know, maybe in the future that when these situations get brought up, that, you know, people are open to the idea that they don't always have the exact right idea on how to handle that kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. And
sorry, I got off on a tangent there.
No, that's fine. Tangents are perfectly acceptable things here.
Mm-hmm.
So, Han, as someone who's relatively new to his stuff, how have you seen kind of that?
I think, because again, I can kind of pull from my writing RPs, because I was pretty much always the moderator for almost everything I did, be it if there were 3 people or 50. I actually did have one where there were 50 people on our server. And, the first time I attempted to do it, I kind of wanted it to be very rules light, and I realized that's just not possible. And that was actually the server where I had 50 people.
Of course.
And, because it just turned into, I was letting pretty much anybody in. There were people who they couldn't get into character. They were not successfully doing the characters that they picked. They were, like I had somebody like suddenly decide that, and like they turned Lex Luthor into Superman, for instance. That was one thing that happened. I'm just like, well, this is kind of out of character, so this is a little weird, but it was very much an experience that taught me that rules are there for a reason, and they're very important to it, because otherwise the story goes insane. So I think definitely rules are very important for it, and following them is extremely important.
Well, I'm not sure that going insane is necessarily a detriment. Who knows? You could be playing Call of Cthulhu.
Yes.
But yes. And that kind of the second part of the question, because I feel like we hit kind of messing up the rules as kind of thing. Like choosing the right rules for your group or story you want to tell, and like how sometimes if you choose the wrong system to tell a certain kind of story, like you can hit this point where everything just kind of chinks and almost locks into place. It's like, I'll admit, I'm a little discouraged right now with last week's episode where it devolves into the thing I absolutely hate in RPGs. The point where everyone clocks out because kind of clocks out in investment because it has devolved to, I hit that thing, I hit that thing, I hit that thing, it tries to hit me ad infinitum, and like there is nothing interesting at all happening other than this fight, which would be a climactic action scene like in a movie, but it has become this most tedious thing. And
I don't know if that's a subject we want to eventually get into on the reverse end of eventually something we could get into as another topic.
Mm-hmm. But so that kind of fakes me. It's like the system. This is not so much to talk about us failing the system, but more about like the idea of the system failing you. It's not doing what to do like when you feel like a game is not doing what you want it to do, or it's not running the way you want to do. Kind of dealing with that kind of thing. It's like this D&D 5e. It's got brand recognition. It's like even people who aren't gamers know of D&D. It's simple. It is very easy to create create characters and have them grow, and it kind of slowly eases you into the bouquet of abilities that you get, and you don't even, until you reach like 3rd level, you don't fully customize your character to have a course in it. So it's very approachable for new people. But lately, like for myself here, I've been running to the point where I feel like it's getting boring. Like, I don't feel like I feel like the stories I could tell in 5e Dungeons and Dragons, I could tell more interesting in the way that the mechanics support the narrative instead of just being auxiliary to it. So that's why that's kind of what, and honestly, that's kind of what spawned this whole topic of failure here. Is like, I feel like I failed you guys in that sense of not providing an entertaining session. At the same time, though, I feel like the system failed me in not giving me the tools to make that happen.
Yeah, this I can actually talk about a bit more because I play a lot more different systems, and like I've actually suggested systems for like games of like, oh, you want to play this next one that I'm actually going to play is a very kind of like it's an MMO RPG. Like we're trapped in an MMO RPG, like kind of like Dot Hack or
Sword Art Online.
Online and stuff like that. So like one of the games that like the GM was like suggesting for that was Mutants and Masterminds. So then I was like, 13th Age would probably work a lot better for this because it's already kind of got this video gaming mechanics to it.
No,
And like I actually introduced them to 13th Age, and we're actually like getting character stuff ready for that, and I'm actually excited to play 13th Age again.
And if
But
I
yeah,
made
like he showed me a bunch of lists and stuff of games, and I was like, this system would be better for masks. Like, so I do feel like stories have their own games that like would work better for him. Like that one game Jane was talking about with like My Hero Academia, like
Masks. That would have been perfect for masks.
yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah.
masks or like
to the GM and was like, nah.
Mind you, that there's a reason for that. Powered by Apocalypse is a very different flavor of RPGs than a lot of people are used to, and it can gel. Like I think for the most part, it did gel with us. Like for me personally, it gels super easy because I like, okay, I got these prompts. It gives me a framework which I can hang narrative on very easily.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I get to be an actor, which like I feel like
Exactly.
I stole the show for that one game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did. Part of it was my fault because I kept kind of feeding it. We kind of back and forth a lot on that.
Yeah, which like, hey, if you like can do that, that's great. But like, I did feel like I kind of overdid that and like, so yeah, like a lot of things with like systems, like there's like a lot of gel periods and like some games just don't gel with systems.
Yeah, and like systems have feels.
Mm-hmm.
Like D&D, I think 5e goes. It's great for introducing people to the hobby, but I feel like it's not like. I think you're gonna have the best bet is someone who likes. Someone you're introduced. It's a best system, I think, for taking people who are crunchy and like some degree of crunch, but are also very experienced role players. So they're going to create the narrative around the bare bones framework there, and they're wanting to pull in new players.
Yeah, this is a problem I have with like 5e is there's not like a lot of. I feel like there's not enough like replayability with like some classes. There's like not a huge amount of customizations and such. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for a game that has the crunch.
But I'll say 5e has gotten better on some of that, but
yeah, I'm also not liking some of Wizards' marketing choices on this thing. Like, yeah, no, it's the hot thing right now, but at the same time, it's like, oh, you want us to rebuy all the books I have already bought on a website that I have to be connected to the internet to use, and they're the same exact price as the physical book I bought.
oof.
I'm looking at you, D&D Beyond. Which, yeah, like looking at for example, the big name there, Critical Role. I think they do well in spite of 5e, not because of 5e.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, because it's a bunch of actors and good role players too. They fully go into the character thing. They will do things that not optimal. They're not trying to power game. They're trying to tell a story, and that's what honestly I think carries the show, not the 5th edition rules.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm familiar with touching familiarity with a lot of systems because my main podcast I listen to, Fandible. I recommend it to everyone. It's been going the last 7 years, so it's got a lot of things, but they have a few long run campaigns, but a lot of they do is a lot of one shots. Why I like it is because there's a lot of table talk, and that's why I kind of like with streaming. I prefer to just throw everything out there and but So I've experienced the little things, and I've seen stuff that works and stuff that doesn't work. That's one of the reasons why I like Atomic Robo, for example, the RPG, because they are freaking hilarious in that game. I realize in some of it is just because they are funny people. It doesn't necessarily translate well, but yeah. I think I'm getting out of a bit of a tangent here.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, it's fine. You just had distraction cast.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, these talks aren't meant to be like fully on topic. All
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess
tangents are fine.
kind of bouncing things off here.
Mm-hmm.
What should you like? What should you do in these cases that you find something that doesn't fit? What do you guys feel like should be done in that kind of circumstance?
I'm well.
Well,
I feel like
you don't
Sorry, you were
fit.
saying?
Well, sometimes like there's certain things that just don't stitch together no matter how hard you try. Like if you wanted to try to do, say, a child version of, say, I don't know, what's a system that's really like grimdark, like Vampire the Masquerade. It would be very hard to do a child system of like Vampire the Masquerade or something like that, because just from the clashing of things, maybe it just doesn't fit your game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious on what you mean by that.
Well, yeah, like I'm just like trying to create discussion about what in abstract. Like, do you try to change the system? Do you try to maybe put in a few house rules? Maybe you just, as a GM, just avoid. Like an example for us, like maybe I should just stop making combat encounters. Though I feel like at that point, why are we running 5e if we're not running any combat encounters? Because the game is, despite what everything the rules say, the game rules are about combat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, where at the point do you say, like, okay, this system isn't working for us at all, let's try something different? And if you try something different, should you try continuing the same story with the different rules, so then just kind of ignore the weird incongruencies that your character can and can't do certain things they could or could not do before? Or do you just say, like, all right, this system is dragging down the story, and this story doesn't feel as good as it should. Let's scrap this all and start a new story with something that better fits the system, or maybe a system that tells a similar story but not the same one. So kind of stuff, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I kind of think like if it wasn't for the fact that we're playtesting a lot of the like from the Ashes stuff, I would say we should probably just change the system to something that more works.
Oh, fun fact,
But,
that's actually nearing final layout, so so that's actually not as much of a concern. I actually do have a cool story, and I really like it. It's just I feel like
it doesn't really fit with like.
Yeah, and it's not knocking against the rules for that, because I've had no problem with the From the Ashes rules. They they seem to be doing what they're intended to do. It's just our group dynamic and everything. But at the same time, I don't want to go to something like Masks, because it's back to Masks just because I feel like I'm just trying to find a voice for us thing. That's why I kind of really want to try Cypher again. I love Cypher so much. And it works for post-apocalyptic. It really does. But that's me wanting to be a lazy GM.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cough super loudly there.
I thought that was a sneeze.
No, that was a cough. I don't have the flu anymore, but it still fucked up my airwaves, so.
Next on failure, Dustin's immune system.
Yes.
It had one job.
I mean, to be fair, it did that job for a pretty long time without, like, me getting sick. But then it was like, oh, hey, I'm suddenly horribly, horribly sick. Yeah, I basically took the entire week off last time, so I was like, ugh.
Yep.
Just spent like 4 days suffering, and then I got like, oh hey, I can finally get medicine because I got died.
And if you're very worried, that's just a traditional issue. Combat systems can be difficult. Part of what you have to do is find a way to tell a story during combat. Like, there's another system I play, my Unforgotten Realms or Unforgotten Realms, whatever you want to call it, that it's similar. You can definitely tell a story in combat and it doesn't destroy the system. It's can be a good. It depends on the game. It depends on like just the individual time you run it or whatever. Sometimes combat can really bog down and make telling a good story hard, but other times you can tell a story in the middle of combat and be very effective at it.
Mm-hmm.
It also depends on like character interactions and stuff like that, and like what the players actually do with their turns. If there's like something in the environment that like you can hide behind, like that could like really increase like the options you have.
I know you were a little flexible on like how good this system last week, but honestly, I thought it was pretty well done. Like, I like that weird mechanic of you had us basically be doing an underwater fight without being underwater, and the mobility. I thought it had some potential to be a really fun, interesting combat. It just we had bad luck, and there's no real way you can ever fix bad luck and just missing out on people. That's I think it was the bigger issue was because poor Dustin was sick, is we were missing somebody, so it did feel a little less united when one of our big players was not there.
Yeah. That brings me to some personal failures on this. I'm going to pull back the curtain here, and allow you to pay attention to the man behind it. But first off, those orbs. I undervalued their defensive ability because they had no real offense. Second, because the fact that you guys weren't doing anything to the orbs, because they had high AC and you were trying to let's just ignore it, I improvised that whole heal them when they're bloody thing, which was a mistake upon mistakes there. Because that just made this whole thing tedious much more. Because what it did is it damaged itself 10 hit points to heal 10 hit points to any allied creature that was below half its health. That was a mistake. The other thing was...
Probably you could have nerfed the healing a little bit and just had it... If it did do the healing, then it drains it from its own health. That way it's a strategic choice to actually attack the orb.
Well, no, yeah,
you could either attack the orb when it couldn't defend itself, or you could attack the enemies and slowly drain the health of the water.
But yes, like I said, the ability was not something I wrote on its character stats or anything. It was something I literally came up with on the spot. So that's why I was saying it was a mistake to add that.
I don't think it was. I think that was some good improvisation to try and make it pseudo-threatening. I get it. I've had issues with that come up when I've GM'd, where an encounter feels undertuned, and you didn't count on a certain thing happening, so you just kind of have to go, well, fuck, they just kind of circumvented my entire...
I remember some U-Realms things that I was like, what is Jane thinking with this encounter? Monsters are so annoying.
You have a really good encounter idea and stuff, but either your players just completely supplement it, and I've gotten better. If you look at one of my more recent campaigns I ran, I set up some very interesting boss fights, but somehow my players just decided to just completely befriend these bosses. So I definitely set up the final boss to be immune and it was going to fight him to the death. But I improv even that because we were well, only one of us wants to fight, and if you're okay with this boss, we'll just have a mono thing. And I'm well, the boss is too strong to fight him, but he does have a champion I can use, so I'll just have that be a one-on-one fight.
Yeah, well, for me, it's I think in combat, ultimately the best thing you can do is error on the side of it making the combat shorter versus making it longer, as longer makes things tedious. And I think that's the biggest thing is after a bit you feel like your choices were early on you guys were being a little more creative, kind of troping it on. Then I realized oh hey, the amount of time you can hold your breath makes the time frame of the battle irrelevant. So even if you couldn't breathe underwater, there was no issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the water had basically all the choices I made just made it stretch out long, and like that's why I'm pointing out them as a failure. Like I did not think about how the fact that all these factors together makes things slow down. And another thing that slows down is, I'm sorry to say this, is player indecision. Like people kind of like trying to hewing and hawing about what they have to do. And some of this is just because people being newer to the system and everything like that. But it's like I'm trying to articulate this here.
No, I get it.
Sweetie,
Sometimes
those
you have
newer to the system were the ones that you said were picking right away.
What?
I was the one that literally had all my moves figured out right away. So it's not really the newer to the system, because I'm the only one new to the system.
Yeah, I don't know how... Carl was the other one that was pretty slow. I didn't know how experienced he was.
Oh, okay. I didn't know somebody else was new to the system. I thought it was just me.
Yeah, well, Carl I know has done at least... I think his first time playing a spellcaster.
Yeah, he's normally a more martial person. Yeah.
And I'll admit, we're definitely a little bit on the higher end. Like, not like super huge amounts, but definitely the nice sweet spot, at least I've learned as a GM, is 4 players normally. Because then rounds don't take a huge amount of time, but there's enough versatility in the party and enough people that you can feel like you can give them a decent challenge. Yeah. And we're slightly over that threshold, so turns can take a little bit longer, especially with inexperienced people. Because, well, we got a good amount of people as well as the enemy.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I guess, since we're just about wrapping up here, because we're getting close to the end, I just wanted to shoot this for an hour. I guess the other thing is, what's the best thing to do with dealing with someone else's failure? Like, a fellow player or the GM's, like, what's the best way to deal with that? Like, when you feel like, okay, they're not doing something right, without coming across as a super hardcore rules lawyer or being rude, but not also still addressing the problem kind of thing. That's just kind of last little bit of topic here.
I feel like the best way to do anything with like a player is just to talk to them and like see if there's anything you can help, like or like give them advice to like how they can play their character better or anything like that. Like.
Yeah.
Honestly, and if you see someone's
I
really...
feel like there's not enough communication between the GM and players, like, about stuff like that, like... like, I know, like, if I had, like, something where I was like, I don't know if I really like this system, I would, like, talk to the GM about it and, like, see if we can work anything out.
Mm-hmm. So... What were you saying, Jane, then?
My other concern was over the fact that sometimes you just have bad luck. Like, there are certain things you can do to make... Like, definitely, you want to make sure you buff the people who just are completely underperforming. Like, if you notice in a long-term campaign that just... Or even if you can improv on the fly... for like a one-shot or whatever, that if you notice one of your players is just...
Jane?
Did we lose Jane?
I believe our Jane Point ESP has crashed. We may need to...
Can you hear me?
Welcome back.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Where did I nod off at?
I'm not entirely sure, actually. My brain is kind of...
No, it's okay, it's okay. What I was saying is sometimes as a GM, you need to give your player... You don't want to give them the answer, but you do want to give them advice. Like, you can point out, like, okay, like, you have the option between doing, like, this, and this, and give them those little options so that way they kind of know, well... Or, like, you can even, and if they want to improv and be creative, you can also give them that freedom, but you give them kind of the basics of going like, well, these are probably the big things that can make a difference in this situation. But you don't want to give them all the answers, so they just completely supplement any sort of challenge or strategy, but you do want to let them know, hey, you do have availability with this ability or skill or whatever, and so they can maybe try to piece that together themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. Like, just do an impromptu, hey, Carl, roll for perception here. And it's like, you notice that the orb is weak to lightning or something like that. Like,
fun fact, the orb was completely weak to lightning.
We didn't have our lightning user.
I had put that
I
in.
use sound apparently, not lightning.
Don't worry, you'll figure it out one day, the difference between thunder and lightning.
it's like, darn. Well, I mean, I wouldn't have been. I mean, I probably would have been help, but I was like, man, I invested all my things into thunder damage.
I know the irony of the setup, and that's why I don't feel last week was as much of a failure as you think, Thomas. I think part of it was just because of the timing of Dustin getting sick, so we didn't have the one person you depended on to actually kind of make that encounter a little bit less of a challenge and less tedious.
And more entertaining.
Yeah.
For one thing.
Hypothetical situation of how it would have worked if we did have Dustin. Is that Dustin would have been there like shooting lightning bolts, like electrifying the water, killing foes, and it would have felt a lot more quick because Dustin could have pretty much almost carried the team a lot quicker by doing a lot more damage.
And like sometimes people just have off weeks, like also like
Yeah,
so,
well,
like,
that's. But like I said, that's part of it is because we can talk more about on where there has been some level of like I say, especially mostly since Pathfinder 2nd Edition playtest came out, and I played around with that, and I actually am really digging the rule set for that. I've been kind of feeling a little like going back to 5e is like, oh, that. But that's for
I can understand that feeling because I've been having that with like I've been playing Pathfinder 1 and then going back to 5e. It's
yeah. Well, I never had that problem with Pathfinder 1 though, actually, because I felt like the core of 5e is streamlined, which I would much rather have a nice workable core than a bloat of options. But if you give me a streamlined core and a bunch of options, then it's better than one or the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, so. But we have reached the end of our time here together, so. To those watching us in the past, present, and future, I bid you all good night. Say good night, Dustin.
Yeah, good night.
You should have just said good night, Dustin. God. You should have just said good night, Dustin. That's all you should have said.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.